George. So I'm having difficulty hearing people. I'm not sure if people aren't talking or just Stephanie, go ahead.
I have a question with the spreadsheet. So
Sure.
everything that's in there, it's due before the exam, or I mean, pretty much.
So the purpose of the spreadsheet is for me, this exam one video is accounting 1A. What I'm trying to do is to create for you the typical types of problems that I will be putting onto my exams. And, you know, on the top of this spreadsheet right here, what you'll find is that you'll find essentially links to the various, I went through here and put the links to the various YouTube videos where you can find the responses. I even did over this past weekend. This is one of the book problems that I slightly modified. So what my goal is when I do this for both the online class and also in the in-person class, is to make sure that you have tools in terms of knowing what to study. My class is a little bit unique in the sense that I don't, how should I put it? I'm not somebody who is going to test from the book. Rather, I create my own problems to test from. And so what ends up happening is that those students who are ultimately successful in my class, they've gone through and they've done, you know, you're learning in accounting, you're learning a skill. So the more times you can go through and repeat questions, the better off you're going to be.
Okay.
And so really like what I would do, and again, this is me, for this question right here that I'm sharing with you on the screen for Buck the Constellation, what I would do is I would practice this question. I would put the transactions into T accounts, prepare a trial balance, and prepare a balance sheet as of December 31st, 2019. And so the solutions of this can actually be found in the videos, but I've also, what I can do right now is walk you through BTCI. I could also walk you through Larry Inc. After we get through the balance sheet questions tonight, what I do want to do is introduce you to the Duey, Suem, and Howe, because that kind of introduces revenue and expenses.
Okay.
However, it's like, look, at the same time, this is, you know, your review session, right? So I'm here. Like the challenge is for like most online classes, you're not, I mean, I don't know how other instructors do it, but I know for my ethics class, I would never do anything like this, just because it's more, can be more of, it's not necessarily a self-study course, but it's just, it's different. In accounting 1A, you're learning a skill. And I know no one likes to read. You would rather watch videos. So it's kind of one of those things where if I, and part of the other challenges too is that, has anybody tried reading the book?
I haven't. I just did the code.
Okay. If you can try to just speak up a little bit, just because I'm not sure if it's my computer speakers that are a little bit hard of hearing, but if you can try to speak up a little bit, that'd be great. It's really one of those things where the book is, if you try to read it, it can be somewhat not really clear on some parts. So my job as your instructor is to essentially take this information and make it as easy as possible for you to go through and understand. So with that being said, what would you like me to work on tonight? What would people like me to do? Do you want me to do a balance sheet? You want me to go through and do a balance sheet question? What would you like me to do? I'm sorry, can you speak up? So who is this? Gion? Hello? So Stephanie, since I see that you're unmuted, is there something that you would like me to review?
I'm looking Sorry, I'm just looking in my head real fast.
I cannot hear at all, so if you can speak into your microphone. Okay, Miyoko. Oh, hey, Miyoko, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Miyoko, so since you're the only one who is unmuted, what would you like me to cover? Do you want me to go through LI or BTCI, or what would you like me to walk you through?
I was actually working on the Duey.
Oh, the Duey, Suem, and
Suem.
Howe. Okay, we can do that one if you want me to. Does everybody? Do you want? Are we ready to go to revenues and expenses, or would you like me to cover just this type of question, which is preparing the transactions into T accounts and the like? So if you don't speak up, it's kind of like a presidential election where two people decide the fate of the whole country. So if you want me to cover the balance sheet first, I can do that. And then I can go through and look at Duey, Suem, and Howe. So Stephanie, you were on first, but what would you like to go through and do?
The Duey one.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do the Duey, Suem, and Howe question. And so this first question right here is something that's going to introduce you to the concepts of what we call revenue and expenses. And so let's just kind of go back and do just a really quick review right here. So the way that we're going to go through and record our transactions is we're going to have our assets are equal to our liabilities plus our owner's equity. Okay, and we also have up here in our nation's capital where nothing gets done is Washington, D.C., or debit and credit. When I do this overlay, it's reminding me that the way I'm going to be recording transactions, I'm going to be recording my assets with debits. They'll increase with debits. They typically have debit balances, and they will decrease with credits. Similarly, liabilities and equity accounts, they have credit balances, and they will be increased with credits and then decreased with debits. Now, if you look at the examples that we've done before in terms of Larry Inc., which is all these transactions take place on December 31st, 2017. Here it's December 31st, 2019. And so the reason why I did that is to get you familiar with how to record assets, liabilities, and equity. But we know from reality that that is not really what happens. Rather, what happens is that our company is generating revenue during the year, meaning that it's performing services. It's also spending money in terms of performing those services. So what we have is during a period of time, what we need to do is we need to show, okay, here is what we earned, or what we call our revenues, and here are the costs of those revenues, which we call expenses. And revenues and expenses are what we call temporary accounts, meaning that we're going to record them for a particular period of time. And then what is going to happen is we're going to close out those revenue and expense accounts to retained earnings at the end of the period. So it's a really important thing just to kind of remember when we're now kind of moving over to this phase. What we're going to be doing here is we're now going to be recording. So now it's a full year. It's not just December 31st. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be recording our revenues and expenses. Now, how do we record our revenues and expenses? The way I like to do it is to think of where I do not want to end up on the weekend, which is going to be the emergency room, or expenses and then revenues. And what this tells us right here is we're going to be recording our revenues with a credit, and we will typically record our expenses with a debit. So That's what we're going through and doing now that we're kind of moving over to this next phase. So before, we were just producing a balance sheet as of December 31st, 2017, or December 31st, with all of the transactions happening on that day. We're now moving into something, though, here where we're going to have transactions throughout the year. And so what we need to do is we're going to basically say, okay, how much did we generate during that period? And then that net amount of what we generated less what we gave back to our shareholders is going to be going to our retained earnings, which becomes a part of owner's equity. Okay, I know that's a lot what I just explained, but I wanted to start with you with that overview. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So with this first question right here, or let's go ahead to go do number one. So are there any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to do right here is on January 1st, 2020, Ivana Suyu and Chase Ambulance formed Duey, Suem, and Howe, a personal injury law firm, by each contributing $50,000 in exchange for the common stock of DSH. So we are doing this from the perspective of DSH. So when we go through and do this here, how do I record transaction number one? What do I want to debit and what do I want to credit?
Cash, the $100,000 total.
Right, so I'm going to debit cash for $100,000, absolutely correct. And for every debit, I need a credit. What account do I want to credit?
Common stock.
Common stock. Now remember, this over here, when I've gone through and I've done this, I can say, oh, does this make sense? And the reason why we can say that it makes sense is because we come back over here and we look at our T theory. Right over here, cash is an asset. So how do we show increases to cash? We do that with a debit, which is what we're doing right here. How did we get $100,000? Well, it was Chase, Ivana, and Chase each gave us $50,000 plus 50 from Chase, and this is going to be equal to that $100,000. So that's how we got this $100,000 right here, is because they each gave us that money. So that's how we went through and did that right here. Okay. So at the same time, in exchange for that cash, we're giving Chase and Ivana common stock. And so common stock is part of owner's equity. And so we're going to increase that right over here with a credit. So are there any questions on this first part right here?
No.
For number one? Is that pretty straightforward?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so the second one we're going to go through doing here is we're going to say during the year ended December 31st, 2020, DSH received $150,000 cash by performing legal services. Upon completion of legal services, they had no further obligations to their clients. Okay, so right over here, okay, what am I receiving from my clients? What are my clients giving me? So I perform the services, and what do the clients give me?
Account receivable.
Well, is it account receivable, or what am I receiving?
Cash.
I'm receiving cash, right? So if it was accounts receivable, you'd have to see language which would be like on account. But in this case right here, they're going to be giving us cash. So how do I show that Duey, Suem, and Howe, how do I show them getting this $150,000 cash? With a debit or a credit to cash?
Debit.
Debit.
Okay, so it's going to be a debit to cash right over here for $150,000. So we're receiving money, right? So my cash is going up. So I'm going to show that over here as a debit to cash. Okay. For every debit, I need a credit. So I performed services, right? So since I've performed services, for every debit, I need a credit. What account should I be crediting?
Revenue.
Correct.
Revenue services.
Services revenue. And I'm going to credit this over here for the same dollar amount, because remember, for my total debits for every transaction need to equal my total credits. So how do I typically record revenue transactions? With a debit or a credit?
A credit.
With a credit. So when I've done this problem, and this is what I really want you to do every single time you're doing these questions, is make sure it makes sense with this. I'm crediting revenue right over here, right? ERDC, and I'm showing an increase to cash right over here with this debit. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So are there any questions about transaction number 2?
No.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and go to number 3, which it says right over here. And notice right here, I'm putting the little number 2s beside them, or number 1, just so I can later reference. Because when we get to other questions, such as this one right here, let's see if this, yeah, look at this. This looks like fun, right? We've got the whole alphabet going on right here, like A through Q. That's a good time, right? That's why this is accounting is so exciting. Look at that. Wow. So we come over here, and this is why it's so important to go through and number them. Okay. So during the year ended December 31st, 2020, I paid a paralegal consultant $55,000 cash. Okay. So I'm paying a consultant $55,000 cash. So I would ask you is my cash balance, is that going up or down?
Down.
So cash is going down. And so how am I going to show a decrease to cash? Do I do that with a debit or a credit?
Credit.
So I'm going to credit cash right here for $55,000. Okay. And right over here, for every credit, I need a debit. What account do I want to debit?
Consultant expense.
So it's going to be consulting services expense. And Miyoko, why is that going to be why is it going to consulting services expense? Why is that?
Because it's a service that we use in our company.
Correct. It was a service that we use in the production of revenue. And so this is a use of an asset. And this is what we're really calling here as an expense. And so this is part of the cost of generating this revenue. Okay, so this is consulting services expense. Now, going back to our T theory of accounting, how do I record my expenses?
Debit.
I record my expenses with a debit. Am I recording consulting services expense here with a debit?
Yes.
Yes. Am I recording the decrease to cash with a credit?
Yeah.
So does it make sense with the T theory?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. So again, always ask yourself that question when you're going through and doing these problems. Okay. Number 4, I purchased equipment costing $15,000 on account, and this is on December 31st, 2020, from Ambulances R Us. I will pay for the equipment in 30 days. Okay. So right over here, what we're going to do is, so let's kind of figure out what's happening in this one for here for number 4. So here for number 4, what exactly is going on? What am I receiving? Number 4. I'm purchasing equipment. Okay, so if you're using something, go ahead, and if you can mute yourself, or I'll just mute everybody. Okay. Okay, Miyoko, I'll take you off mute.
Okay.
Okay, and then if anybody else wants to unmute themselves, just kind of raise their hand and I'll unmute you. Just so if we've got somebody doing some stuff in the back, right? Important to make sure we check on that. Okay, so Miyoko, what am I receiving right here for number 4?
Equipment.
So I'm receiving equipment, and what type of account is equipment? Is it an asset, liability, equity, expense, or revenue?
It's an asset.
It's an asset. So over here for equipment, and I'm receiving the asset, so my equipment is increasing. So how do I want to show that increase to equipment?
As a debit.
As a debit, right over here for 15,000. Okay. And so for every debit, I need a credit. Am I paying cash for this equipment?
No, it's going to be on accounts.
Right. And this is really important. When you see something right here where it says on account, that means we are not paying for it now. Okay. We're going to be paying for it later. So what account do I want to credit? What am I incurring here?
Payable, accounts payable.
Right. I would accept either, you could either do accounts payable or possibly notes payable. I would accept either answer. Okay. Notes payable may be the technically more correct response, just because what that relates to is, in fact, kind of going through and saying, like right over here, it's like, oh, because it's equipment, it's securitized, and so therefore, I would use notes payable, but for the purpose of this example, I will accept accounts payable. Okay. So are there any questions? There's a raise your hand feature on ConferZoom. I believe you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. However, please avoid using that garbage disposal in the background when you are talking. Okay. So right over here. So I've done this part here. So what do I want to do next? What's my next step going to be?
A trial balance.
I want to do a trial balance. And why is it that I want to do a trial balance?
Make sure everything equals.
Right. And it's really more not just everything, but I want to make sure that my total debits equal my total credits. So right over here, I'm going to total up each one of these different accounts. And so right here, so I had $250,000 of cash that I received. $100,000 was from the initial investment. $150,000 was from the revenue that I generated. However, I paid out $55,000 for the consultant. So at the end of the day, how much cash do I have? So here, whenever I have balances on both sides, I subtract the smaller value from the larger value. And here I'm going to end up with 195,000, or this 195 right here. Okay. So that's how I add up for cash. And I'm looking here because the rest of my questions only have one transaction. So, but I need to go through and add these up anyways. So my common stock just had that initial transaction there of $100,000. I'm going to go here and do the same thing for services revenue. Has an ending balance here of $150,000. My consulting services expense has an ending balance here of 55. And my equipment right here has an ending balance of 15,000. And for accounts payable, I have an ending balance of 15,000. So what I'm doing right now is all I've gone through is I've basically added up each one of these individual T accounts, and now I'm ready to make my trial balance. Okay. So are there any questions so far? I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. If you have a question, please feel free to ask. Okay. So Tibi, you good?
Yeah.
Zhao, any questions? Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to go through and do now is I'm going to go ahead and do my trial balance. So when I do a trial balance, all I'm really doing is kind of what Miyoko said earlier, which is I'm making sure that my total debits equal my total credits. And when I do this trial balance, I want to do so in a way that's kind of going to emulate my financial statements. And what I mean by that, and this is as of Okay. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to list down my assets. Okay. Got my assets, and I'm going to have my liabilities. I'm going to have my owner's equity. Okay. And then what I'm going to do over here is the one difference, right? So when I'm doing the trial balance, and when I was doing this previously, what I would do is I would have the assets, liabilities, and equity. But however, now because I have income statement accounts, then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go with revenues and then my expenses. So that's how I want to go through and lay this out. Very, very important. If we organize this well the first time, it's going to make our lives a lot easier later on. So in terms of making the trial balance, my assets are cash. And I had cash here of 195,000. And I also had equipment. And my equipment account balance was $15,000. For my liabilities, I had accounts payable, which had a credit balance of $15,000. For owner's equity, I had common stock of $100,000. Now, the other thing with owner's equity we're going to be seeing here in a minute, we're going to have an account called retained earnings. And this balance here is going to be 0. Okay, because this is the first year of our business. This will have a 0 balance. The retained earnings account is going to be important because after we go through and prepare our income statement, then what's going to happen is we're going to have to figure out how much are we going to have remaining at the end of the day, or how much of those earnings are going to be retained by the corporation. So right here I have services revenue of 150,000. And then for my expenses, I have consulting services expenses over here of 55,000. Now, when it comes to doing the trial balance, this is something that is very informal. When I'm going through and grading your exams, I may assign out of say, if we called it out of like 100 points on a test, it might be worth 2 points. So if this question was, say, if out of a percentage, the trial balance would be worth roughly about 2%, if even that. It's not worth that many points. The most amount of points you're going to see given for a test is going to be how you're inputting them into the various different T accounts, and then going through and then preparing the financial statements and closing out the temporary accounts to retain earnings. So my next step here is, after doing this, I want to make sure that my total debits equal my total credits. So over here, I have total debits of 265,000, and then I'm going to have total credits over here of 265,000. Okay. So are there any questions? I'll go ahead and unmute everybody. Okay. So any questions?
No.
Okay, great. So the next thing I'm going to go through and do, and you'll notice here on my exam, what I'll do is I'll show you over here. I'll be pretty specific in terms of what you need to do. So over here, it says prepare T accounts, which we just did, an unadjusted trial balance. And now we need to do an income statement. So to do an income statement, and this tells us what we earned over a specific period of time, we're going to say here DSH income statement. And this is going to say specifically for the year ended 12/31/20. And when we do an income statement at this point in time, I'm asking you to do a single step, which means we're going to take our revenues less the cost of those revenues or our expenses, and this is going to give us net income. So here for our revenues, we have services revenue, and our services revenue totaled $150,000. And for our expenses, we had consulting services expenses. This totaled over here at $55,000. So my total revenues here is going to be 150,000. Put a little underline on that so we know it's separate. And here I only had one expense. So my total expenses are going to be 55,000. So from an accounting standpoint, when I look at this, my net income for the period, or what my revenues less my expenses, are going to be right here, is going to be $95,000. Okay. Notice here when I do the income statement, this is very, very important. You have to do a heading. So DSH income statement, and it's for the year ended December 31st, 2020. It's a period of time. This is how much money, or this is what we earned on an accounting basis during this period of time. Also notice here, do you see debit or credit anywhere on this financial statement?
No.
No. And in fact, let's just take a look at an SEC document. And what's a publicly traded company you want to look at?
Amazon.
Okay, AMZN, always a popular one. Hopefully I can get the billions in revenue correct this time. So right over here, if I'm looking at the quarterly report for Amazon, what I'm going to see is right here. Can you all see my Amazon on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So right over here, when you look at terms of the revenues minus the expenses, what I see right here is I have my sales, which is really like revenues, less my expenses is getting me down to my net income. Clearly, Amazon's a little bit more complicated than Duey, Suem, and Howe, but it's the same principle. Do you notice here, do you see any debit or credit here at all?
No.
No, and we do not put that at all in the financial statements. We do have it on the trial balance. However, it's only to help us making sure that that our total debits actually equaled our total credits. Okay, so I've made an income statement. The next thing I have to go through and do after doing an income statement is a statement of retained earnings. So for my statement of retained earnings, the way this one is set up, this is going to also be for the year ended 12/31/20. The way I do my statement of retained earnings, I'm going to have my beginning retained earnings plus my net income minus any dividends. It's going to be giving me my ending retained earnings. Now, we have not yet spoken about dividends yet. Dividends is when we are giving money back to our shareholders. If we are giving money back to our shareholders in the form of a dividend, it does not go on the income statement, because giving back to our shareholders is not an expense of doing business. Rather, it's a distribution of what we earned. So my beginning retained earnings is going to be 0. How much did I have in terms of net income? What was the net income I just calculated?
95,000.
95,000. So right over here, I'm going to go 95,000 and then 95,000. Pulling this right here from the income statement. That's why you have to do it in this order. So my dividends were 0 because we did not have any for this particular problem. So my ending retained earnings balance is going to be my beginning retained earnings plus my net income minus my dividends, are 95,000. Okay. So are there any questions on how I prepared the statement of retained earnings?
No.
Please ask. Great. Okay. So the next thing I have to do, and this is also really important, this is worth a lot of points on your test, is I have to close out the temporary accounts to retained earnings via T accounts. And what you're going to see is on your exam, what you'll see is you'll see a page, and that page will essentially have over here. So what you'll be seeing over here is on this page, you'll be seeing a variety of different T accounts. Okay, so and what it will say is on one of them, it's going to show you retained earnings, and the rest of them will be blank. So when you're going through and doing this next step, remember what I said before is that revenue and expense accounts are temporary accounts, and they just reflect what we earned and what we expended against those earnings during the period. So what we have to do is we have to close out these accounts to retained earnings. Because at the end of the day, when I'm doing what we call a post-closing, when I'm doing what we call a post-closing trial balance, and this is at 12/31/20, and I can just kind of copy this format here. What I have to do is when I do this post-closing trial balance, the services revenue has to be 0, and my consulting services expense has to be 0, with the balance going into retained earnings. Because revenue and expense accounts show what we earned or what we earned or expended during a period, and at the end of that period, it goes into retained earnings. And if you think about it, kind of by definition, what does retained earnings mean? It means that, okay, we generated this amount of income, we paid this amount out to our shareholders, and so this is what we're actually keeping. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this part right over here is I'm going to list out in these T accounts all of my temporary accounts. So I'm going to have here services revenue, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring those balances over. So services revenue here had a credit balance of $150,000, and my consulting services expenses had a debit balance of $55,000. So what I would ask you now is what we need to do is we need to make these accounts 0. So what do I need to do to services revenue in order to make this account 0? What do I need to do here in the T account?
Debit it.
I need a debit here to services revenue. Okay. Now, what's our rule in accounting? For every debit, I need a
Credit.
credit. So over here in retained earnings, I'm going to credit services revenue for $150,000. Now, what you're going to notice is right here, what is my ending balance now in services revenue? After I've done this, what's my new balance?
0.
Correct. My new balance in services revenue is going to be 0. Okay. So now let's do the same thing with our consulting services expense. Okay. So with consulting services expense, because this is also a temporary account, I also need to make this account 0. So how do I make this account 0 on this T account?
Credit.
I need a credit for $55,000. And so for every credit, I need a debit.
Debit.
So what do I want to debit? What account should I debit? If I'm crediting consulting services expense for $55,000, what account do I want to debit?
Retain earning.
Retain earnings, absolutely correct. So I'm going to debit retain earnings right here. And when I debit retain earnings, okay, now this is at 0. This is really where I'm going to be doing a huge check my work. And when I do this over here, 0 plus 150,000 is 150,000, 55,000 here. So what is my ending balance in retained earnings? I subtract the smaller from the larger value, and I put the remainder on the side with the larger value. So here, when I subtract 55,000 from 150, I end up with 95,000. Does that number look familiar?
Yes.
Yes, it has to equal this balance right here that we went through and we computed here for retained earnings. So this is how we go through and check our work. This is a very simplified example in terms of how we go through and close out the accounts to retain earnings, but it is a very important part. Okay. So after closing out these accounts, right? So I closed out my expenses, or my revenues are now 0. My consulting services expenses here are also 0. Do I now have a new ending balance and retained earnings? Does my retained earnings now have a balance? Did I just create a balance here and retain earnings?
95.
A $95,000 credit, okay? So let's go through here. When I closed out the temporary accounts, did I do anything here to cash? Did I do anything here to equipment?
No.
No.
No. And what's really important is that when you're doing this closeout, you never close out an asset, liability, or an equity account, right? We only close out anything that is on the income statement and dividends. So right over here, I add accounts payable of 15,000 that hasn't changed, and then I have common stock here of 100,000. So in my post-closing trial balance, which is essentially what we just did down here in terms of closing out the accounts, do my total debits equal my total credits?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm good to go. So the very last thing I'm going to go through and do is to do a balance sheet. And when I'm doing a balance sheet, what that balance sheet is going to be is it's going to be a snapshot in time in terms of what my assets, liabilities, and equity accounts are. So here I'm going to have DSH balance sheet, and this is very important. It is not going to be for the year ended or down here for the year ended. It is a period of time. So it's a snapshot in time. So this will be as of 12/31/20. And this is how I label my balance sheet. So what am I doing in my balance sheet? I'm showing my AELOE. My assets are equal to my liabilities plus my owner's equity. So here we're going to have assets. My assets here are cash and equipment. So over here I've got 195 and then I've got 15,000. So my total assets are going to be here $210,000. And I said that my total assets need to equal my total liabilities, which is going to be here, accounts payable or notes payable. Notice I'm not doing anything over here. I'm not saying that this is a debit or a credit. I'm just laying out the numbers. So my total liabilities are going to be 15,000. If you've had accounting before, we're not doing a classified balance sheet at this point and segregating out our assets and our liabilities. We're going to be doing that for the next exam. Lastly, I'm going to have owner's equity, where I will have common stock and then retain earnings. So here my common stock is 100,000. My retain earnings is going to be 95,000. So my total owner's equity is going to be 195,000. So the last thing I need to prove, right? I'm proving ultimately what I do here. This AELOE is my assets are equal to my liabilities plus my owner's equity. This is in essence, this is my balance sheet. So my last part right here is going to say total liabilities plus owner's equity is going to be 15,000 plus 195 or 210,000. So what I've done is my balance sheet balances. My total assets of 210,000 are equal to my total liabilities plus my total owner's equity right over here of 210,000. Okay. So it's a lot of talking by me. I know it's always exciting when I talk. I don't think so. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. And if you have a question, please ask. I want to make sure that you understand this. So Stephanie, do you have a question?
Yes. I'm just wondering if this video you're gonna post it on Canvas.
Yes, so what I'm going to do is it's going to be posted on, if this video will be posted unlisted on YouTube. And then what I'm going to do is then I will then provide the link onto Canvas.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you want to look at, I've also gone through and done it without any student questions, which you can find it right here. So if you click on this link up here, this if I went to this video right here, we'll see what I look like a screen within a screen within a screen, which is gonna be kind of freaky. So if I went right here, and I think that this is, yeah, and this is just another example I've gone through in terms of, this is the same question.
Okay.
So you can also find this here, but I think it's always helpful if we're kind of going through, I mean, I think people find this more, the best way to learn accounting is just to continue to go through and review problems and do them repeatedly. Because again, what you're doing is you're learning a skill, and that skill is hopefully going to obtain you employment. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And so it's, again, it's just going through the questions repeatedly. Okay, so are there any questions, any other questions on Duey, Suem, and Howe? Okay, so Stephanie?
So in exam, we have to memorize this, like everything that you just discussed, right?
Well, it's not a question of memorizing, right? So when you get to an exam, this is very simplified. You will not find something like this on my test. This is more, it's going to be something that's more likely what you're going to find on my exam, which is you're going to have all these different types of questions, right? Or all these different transactions. You're going to have to go through, post them into the T accounts. You're then going to have to then post them into the T accounts, make an unadjusted trial balance. Then you're going to go through, do the income statement, statement of retained earnings. You're going to close out the temporary accounts to retain earnings. And then you're going to make a post-closing trial balance, and then you're going to do a balance sheet. So, and on your exam, I will give you T accounts that have the various different names on them. They're not going to have balances, but you will have all these ones that have these various different names. You're not going to need to do that. And also too, notice here, when I'm asking you for a, basically an income statement for the year ending December 31st, 2020. So when you get the exam, you're going to know that, oh, when I do an income statement, it has to be for the year ended blank, right? Over here, prepare a statement of retained earnings for the year ended December 31st, 2020, which is also something we would do. The other things I forgot to load up on this, which is my fault, is that I would also say close out all temporary accounts to retained earnings via the provided T accounts. And then it's going to be, the next one will be prepare a post-closing trial balance. And this will be prepare an unadjusted trial balance. So for your exam, this is what you're going to be asked to do. So this is a much larger question. We can actually go through and do this right now. It would probably take us a little bit more than an hour, but it's something we can definitely go through and do if you want to do it.
Is this printable?
I'm sorry?
Is this printable?
I'm not sure if it's printable, but you should have the ability to look at it in terms of on screen. You should have access to this to at least be able to look at this on screen.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when we're doing the test, it's like all paperized, correct? Like, are we expected to know how to use, how to like do spreadsheets like the way?
No, okay, so Tiffany, that's a great question. Okay, so first off, no, the exams are pencil and paper, right? Or pen and paper. As long as you don't use red pen, that's fine. You can use smelly markers. You can use whatever you want to use. Okay. If you're going to put like a little blueberry marker on there, it's going to be great. But in any event, right, it's like what's going to end up happening is when you walk into the test, there's no Excel sheet.
Mhm.
And I think if I didn't say this in the videos earlier, is Microsoft Excel one of the most important classes that you can take, regardless of if you're doing accounting or not?
Mhm.
It absolutely is. And if you don't have proficiency in Excel, when you transfer or when you go to your employer, you're going to be far behind. I mean, it's that simple. And my Excel skills are horrible. I need to take the class. And I'm trying to talk to Professor Kasoy about letting me in. I think she's kind of afraid because of how crazy I would start going in the discussion groups, especially if I was a student and I had some of my former my former students in that section. It'd be kind of entertaining. So, but that's really what you're trying to do. Stephanie, you got a question?
Yes, for regarding Excel, do we have to be really, really an expert, or can I just do basic Excel?
Well, look, I think that for most employers, and this is just to tell you, and I don't know if you heard it in my classroom or if you saw it on the video, or even in an announcement I made during the earlier part of the semester. I met with the head recruiter of Ernst & Young, and when we were talking, I asked her, I said, what is the most important class that somebody can take prior to starting at Ernst & Young? And of course, I was expecting her to say Tchaikovsky's 1A accounting class, because I've literally placed like 5 employees there. Like 5 of my former students are all working at Ernst & Young.
Wow.
But she didn't pay me that compliment. She said, the most important class you can take is Microsoft Excel. And what's interesting is when I had a former student of mine who went to go work at White Nelson D11s, which is where Dee Bowden works, and also Candy Huey, one of my former students, Jeffrey, he turned a 3-month internship into an 18-month internship because of how good he was at Microsoft Excel. It is by far the most important skill you can have in accounting and in business, because if we all been hearing this stuff about big data, how many times do you hear about big data? Do we hear a lot about it?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear about it endlessly. You have to be able to go through and be able to manipulate data and to put it together in a way that's understandable to people. So that's why taking Microsoft Excel, if you don't take it, you're behind. And all I can tell you is the first classes that I would be going through and registering for are the Microsoft Excel classes, which is Accounting 112.1, 112.2, and 212.3. And you can do that in fall or in spring. I mean, actually, you could do that in spring. So that's what I would do.
Do you know if they offer that for the summer?
They do offer it for the summer, but it fills up pretty quickly. I would just, the thing is, though, I would take 112.1 and 112.2 during the spring, so then you can take the advanced spreadsheets class in summer.
Okay.
And again, the 212.3 is not going to, and if you see a class like Accounting 1A, any class you see at IBC that's numbered 1 through 99 transfers to a UC or a Cal State. If you see something that's numbered 100 to 199, it's going to transfer to a Cal State generally. If you see a class that's 200 or above, it's just going to transfer. It actually doesn't transfer. However, because it's more considered to be upper division. However, do you want to spend $46 a unit if you're a domestic student, or do you want to spend, what is it cost? I know at Chapman it's really expensive, but that's the whole thing. It's like you're getting the best bargain in the world in terms of a per unit base on a per unit cost for your education. So I would take the classes at IBC. But again, I'm going to be biased.
So if someone is know how to do pivot tables and VLOOKUP, would that be for the next class? For what Excel class would you recommend?
So I would take the Excel classes I would take Accounting 112.1, Accounting 112.2, which is it's cross-listed with CIM 112.1 and CIM 112.2. And then I would take 1.212.3, which is offered in summer. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we're about an hour in. Would you like me to do this? We want to start this larger question. What would you like to do?
We can start with that.
Okay. Is everybody good with that, or is there anything anybody else would like me to go over? Miyoko, how are you doing?
Good, good. We can continue.
Okay, let's keep going. All right. Okay. So this is going to be kind of fun because, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. Okay. We'll take our friend right over here. Okay. So right over here, basically, we're being asked to do, go through question or examples A through N in terms of the transactions. So this is going to be a little bit different than our last question. However, it's the same kind of concepts. So let's go ahead and start it up. I'm trying to think the best way to go through, and I'll just do it like this. Okay, so on January 1st, 2020, Timmy and Larry form Infiniti Rocks, a consulting business. On January 1st, Timmy and Larry each contribute $105,000 in exchange for common stock. So how do we want to record transaction letter A? What do I do?
Cash, 210,000. Common stock, $210,000.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to do letter A. Okay, and again, we're going to show an increase because it's on the debit side over here to cash. So does that make sense, right? Equity, we're going to show an increase to equity with a credit, and we're showing an increase to cash with a debit. And how did we get 210,000?
From Timmy.
So 105 from Larry plus 105 from Timmy equals 210,000 total. Okay. All right. So any questions on that? Okay. Letter B, I perform consulting services for a client, Roger Gregg Inc., and I send an invoice to them for $40,000. Okay. So I've performed services. Okay. And so when I perform services, what do I need to recognize?
Debit.
Credit.
Oh.
Credit.
What do I need to credit?
Um,
If I've performed services, what do I need to credit? So when I perform services over here, right, regardless of whether or not we receive the cash, when I perform services here, what did I credit?
it's revenue.
Services revenue, okay? So right over here for transaction B is I performed the services. So what I need to do is I need to credit over here services revenue. And if I didn't know the account that I could use, they're going to be listed out down here and they will be put onto the T accounts. Or another way of putting this is consulting services revenue. Okay, so I'm going to credit consulting services revenue over here for $40,000. Okay, so right over here for every credit. So does anybody have any questions on why I credited consulting services revenue for transaction B? Okay, So I did the work and I sent them an invoice. Does everybody know what an invoice is? If you don't, please feel free to ask. It's very important that you ask questions. No question is a bad question. More than likely, if you have a question about what a piece of terminology is, more than likely someone else has it as well. So if you don't know something, please ask. Does everybody know what an invoice is? Okay. So what account, for every credit, I need a debit. What account do I want to debit for $40,000? Am I getting cash?
Receivable.
Correct. I'm going to be debiting right over here. I'm going to be debiting accounts receivable, and this is going to be for $40,000. Okay. So very, very important. I'm not receiving cash. I did the work and I sent them an invoice. Okay. So are there any questions on letter B? Okay. So right over here, I've got letter C. So on April 10th, 2020, I receive an invoice from a consultant that I hired, Mary David Inc. The invoice is for $15,000. I paid 20% of the invoice amount in cash, and I will pay the remaining balance in 150 days. So how do I record this transaction? So what benefit did I receive? What would this be down here? So I hired a consultant. Okay, so I received an invoice from a consultant that we hired. Okay, and this is over here. This is basically for Mary David. So they sent me an invoice for $15,000. I paid 20% of the amount in cash. I'm going to pay the remaining amount in 150 days. So what did I receive the benefit of? What did I receive?
You receive services.
I receive. So what I'm going to record is what account do I, or what should I be recording here?
Consultant service expense.
Consulting services expense. And how do I record an expense, with a debit or a credit?
It's a debit.
Right here, debit expenses, right? So this is the inverse of what we were doing in B. So if I'm receiving the benefit of services, I need to record consulting services expense. So I'm going to go over here and debit consulting services expense for $15,000. For every debit, I need credits. So how am I paying for these services? What's happening to my cash? Is it going up or down?
Down.
Down by how much?
$3,000. Well, 20% off the 15,000.
20%. Right. So it's going to be 15,000 or a credit to cash times 20% or $3,000. Okay. So this is 15,000 invoice. Okay. So right here, and when I write the letter K, what does that mean?
Thousands.
It's in thousands. Okay. So, however, one of our rules is that whenever I have my total debits need to equal my total credits. What's the problem I'm running into though right now?
The remaining.
The balance.
Right, the balance, right? So my transaction right now is out of balance. So I need a credit for how much?
$12,000.
For $12,000, this is transaction C. And do I still owe Mary David money?
Yes.
So what do I want to call it?
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable. Does it make sense that I'm increasing my liabilities with a credit because I owe her money now? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because AELOE, liabilities and equity are on the right side, and they're increased with credits, decreased with debits. Similarly, it makes sense that I'm crediting cash because I'm decreasing my cash by paying that out. Okay, so are there any questions on letter C? Okay, let's go to letter D. I hire a consultant, McLaughlin McNeil Inc. I give them $35,000 for future services that they will be performing for us. Okay, so let's do the easy part first. Is cash going up or down?
Down.
How do I show a decrease to cash?
Credit.
Okay, so okay, we want to make this mistake right now, write down on the exam, correct?
No.
Always want to make these mistakes now. Okay, so I'm crediting cash for $35,000. My cash is going down because I'm paying Professor McLaughlin $35,000. Aren't we nice? Do we all know June McLaughlin? Has anybody had her for the legal environment of business?
No.
Okay. Well, when you do, tell her that she was warmly shown in one of my questions. Okay. So for every credit, I need a debit. Okay. Now, what account do I want to debit? So is this consulting services expense? Have they provided the services for us yet?
Not yet.
No.
No, this is really important. This is for future services. So what this is going to be called is going to be called prepaid consulting services expense. So this is an asset, which is going to be right here. And how do I show an increase to my assets with a debit or a credit?
Debit.
With a debit. I decrease my cash with a credit because my cash went down, and I'm increasing my assets with that debit. Okay, are there any questions?
No.
Okay, all right. So from the transaction in B, RGI pays us $30,000. Okay, so first question is, what's happening to my cash? Is it going up or down? For letter E. So from the transaction in B, so I perform services, and when I perform the services, I debited accounts receivable and I credited revenue. Now the client is sending me $30,000 cash. So what's happening to my cash? Is it going up or down?
Up.
So how do I show an increase to my cash?
Debit.
The debit? Okay. So for every debit, I need a credit. What account do I want to credit?
Accounts receivable?
It's going to be accounts receivable. And why? Does the client still owe us $40,000 once they pay me 30?
Oh.
Right, they owed me 40. I just paid 30. So how much do they owe me now?
4.
They owe me 4,000?
10.
They owe me, how much do they owe me now?
5,000.
They owe me $5,000?
Oh, no.
What do we do? So right over here. So they owed me, just let's do this real quick. They owed me 40,000. They paid me 30,000. And so how much do they owe me?
Oh, 10. 15.
They owe me 30,000, subtract the smaller from the larger. So now they owe me 10 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. I must have been hearing something different on my end. It's okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, right, Tchaikovsky. It's Sunday night. It's like, come on, give us a break. Okay. So that's letter E. Let's take a look at the letter F. So on August 1st, 2020, I perform consulting services for a client, 49ers Inc., and I send them an invoice for $120,000. So what do I want to do here for letter F? What do I debit and what do I credit? So if I've performed services for somebody, what do I need to record?
Revenue.
Revenue. How do I record revenue, with a debit or a credit?
Credit.
With a credit. Okay, so right over here, I'm recording the revenue with a credit. For every credit, I need a debit. Okay, am I receiving cash for letter F? I'm sending them an invoice. So have they paid me cash?
No.
Receivable.
Nope, it's going to be accounts receivable over here for letter F. Okay, are there any questions about that? Note that this is essentially the same transaction as letter B. There's really no difference. Okay, and this is why it is so important that when you're going through and taking my exam, is that you're going to see all of these different, there's a finite universe, not a multiverse, but there's a finite universe in which I can pull questions from. If you have not gone through and practiced these questions, and I mean like 5 or 6 times, it's going to be a bad day at the office or a bad day at the exam. It's not going to be fun. You have to practice. Cannot tell you the importance of that enough. Okay? Okay, so right over here, that was letter F. Now we're on to letter G. So I pay the remaining balance owed to Mary David Inc. from transaction C. So how much did I owe from transaction C? What did I owe to Mary David Inc.?
15,000.
Right, so I received 15,000 of services. How much did I pay for those services in cash?
3,000.
I paid 3,000. So how much did I have remaining owed to her?
$12,000.
12,000. So I'm paying her the remaining balance. So if I'm paying her the remaining balance, what's happening to cash? Is it going up or down?
It's going down.
By how much?
$12,000 on
By
credit.
$12,000. So over here, this is going to be transaction G. Okay, let me just do this one thing here. Okay, so if I'm crediting cash, what account do I want to debit?
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable. And why? Do I still, once I pay this, do I still owe her the money?
No, you don't.
No, I don't. So how do I decrease a liability with a debit or a credit?
Debit.
Right, so my liabilities are going down, so I'm going to do that with a debit. My cash is going down, so I'm doing that with a credit. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So on October 1st, 2020, I received $75,000 cash from a new client, Raiders Broncos, Inc. I will perform the work for Raiders Broncos in January of 2021. Let's do the easy part first. What's happening to cash? Is it going up or down?
Up. 75.
Cash is going up by 75,000, so I'm going to be doing that with a debit. So right over here, this is going to be letter H. And then for every debit, I need a credit. What account do I want to be crediting? Do I credit revenue?
Yes.
Have I, well, be really careful here. When I've recorded revenue, right, I have to perform the work during the period. When am I going to be performing the work for Raiders Broncos?
This will be unearned revenue.
Unearned revenue. And what type of account is unearned revenue?
Retained.
Let's look it over here. So unearned revenue means that I have an obligation to perform services in the future.
Owner's equity.
Is it owner's equity?
Liability.
It is a yeah. We can go through all these, right? We can say, okay, you got a third and a third chance, right? No, it's gonna be it's a liability, right? So I'm receiving money, but I haven't performed the services, and this is a very, very important transaction to understand. Unearned revenue is a liability. It is not revenue. Have I graded a lot of exams where students will list out unearned revenue as a revenue on the income statement? Has that happened before?
Okay.
Will students list out unearned revenue here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is that a big no-no?
Yeah. Where should it go?
Oh yeah. You don't do it, right? Unearned revenue is a liability. When you receive money, and if you haven't, the key thing with revenue is you have to have performed the services. Then I can say that I've earned that revenue. And so right here for letter H, I have to show it as unearned. Okay. So I know that's a little bit of a new concept, but are there any questions on unearned revenue? Are we good? Okay. So let's go to the next one over here. So the next one over here is on November 1st. I received $20,000 in inventory that I will be reselling in 2021 from Chargers Lambs. I received the inventory on account and the balance will need to be paid in 90 days. Okay. So for letter I, what am I receiving? What am I getting?
Asset.
I'm getting an asset in the form of what?
Inventory.
I'm receiving inventory. Okay, and the amount of inventory that I'm receiving is how much?
20,000.
So I'm receiving $20,000 worth of inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and debit inventory. For every debit, I need a credit. What account do I want to credit?
Accounts
Payable. Account
It's
payable.
accounts payable, right? I've received an asset, but I haven't paid for it yet. So I'm going to be crediting accounts payable. That's going to be letter I for $20,000. Okay, are there any questions on letter I? Okay, so on December 1st, 2020, I declare and I pay a cash dividend of $9,000 to the shareholders. I realize we have not covered dividends yet, but what I want you to think about is when I'm paying a dividend to my shareholders, is my cash going up or down?
Down.
My cash is going down, so how do I show a decrease in cash with a debit or a credit?
Credit.
So I'm going to show a decrease to cash right over here with a $9,000 credit. For every credit, I need a debit. What account should I be using to record the debit?
Dividends.
It's going to be dividends. You're absolutely correct, Miyoko. So right over here, I'm going to be debiting dividends. And if you can't remember that, and remember, dividends are a little bit, they're not a revenue or expense account, but they are in fact a temporary account because it tells us what we gave back to our shareholders during the specific period of time. So right over here, what I'm doing is my rule generally for dividends is going to be to debit dividends. And then I kind of figure out the other part of it because I'm paying cash to my shareholders. So my cash is going down. Okay. So are there any questions over here for the letter J for the dividends? Are we good? Okay. Letter K, I pay my landlord $3,000 for office rent for the month of December. Do the easy part first. Is cash going up or down?
Down.
How do I show a decrease to cash?
Credit.
So I'm going to credit cash for $3,000. For every credit, I need a debit. What do I want to debit?
Rental. Lease.
So what it would be is you would call it just, it would be over here, it would be rent expense. So it's for the month of December. I've gone through and I've used it. So what I'm going to be doing over here is I'm going to be debiting rent expense. And I'm going to debit rent expense for $3,000. This will be letter K. Okay. Any questions on letter K? Okay, on letter L, I pay $2,000 for an electricity bill for the month of December of 2020. So What's happening to my cash? Is it going up or down?
Down.
Down. So right over here for letter L, I'm going to show a credit over here for $2,000. For every credit, I need a debit. What do I want to call this account?
Utility expense.
Utilities expense. So I'm going to go over here. Say utilities expense. Okay. All right, letter M. We're almost done with recording these NT accounts. So letter M, Chuck contributes $50,000 of equipment in exchange for common stock. Okay. So what is IRI receiving? What are they receiving?
Equipment.
They're receiving equipment, and equipment is what type of account?
Asset.
It's an asset. So how do I show this increase to equipment?
Debit.
Debit or credit?
Debit.
Debit. Okay, so for every debit, I need a credit. So I'm receiving this equipment, and what am I giving away in exchange for that equipment?
Common stock.
Common stock. So I'm going to go over here to common stock.
Credit.
Okay. All right, so I loan money to Patriots Lions. The loan is repayable within 120 days and bears interest at 8%. So I'm giving money or I'm loaning money to Patriots Lions. What's happening to my cash? Is it going up or down?
Down.
Down. So I'm going to be crediting cash over here for $7,000. So for every credit, I need a debit. What account do we think that this is over here?
Note payable.
Is it a payable? Do I owe them money or do they owe me money?
Or receivable. Note
It's going to be correct. It's going to be what we call a loan receivable. Okay, and so over here, I'm going to go and just say, and something that's really important over here is you're going to see this additional information about the loans are payable in a certain amount of time and bears interest. We're not going to worry about the interest rate or anything else like that for the first exam. When we get to the second exam and we start dealing with adjusting journal entries, that's going to be very, very different. Okay, so I've gone through and I've recorded all of these different transactions. What would my next step be in terms of doing this problem? What would I want to do next?
Total the T accounts.
Total the T accounts, and then what am I going to prepare next? Will be my first step.
Adjusted trial balance.
It would be actually be an unadjusted trial balance. So I've input in the transactions. Now, in terms of the points on an exam, for this particular exam, doing this right here, that's about 40% of the problem. And by the way, when we're going through and we're getting ready for that exam, what's the best way that I can go through and make sure that I'm prepared? What should I do to make sure that I'm prepared for the test?
Practice.
Okay, right. And it's not only practicing, though. It's going to be practicing under timed conditions. And so what some of my more successful students have told me is that they would literally time themselves taking these questions. And that's really what would help them out ultimately. So you're not going to be there initially, but over time, as you redo these questions repeatedly, it's going to get easier and easier for you. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to total up the accounts, and that's going to help me get to my trial balance. Okay, so any questions so far on transactions A through N?
No.
Okay. Is this helpful?
Yes.
Great. Are you excited about being a YouTube star? I should say an unlisted YouTube star.
A little bit.
You gotta love it, right? Okay. This of course beats the accounting 1A class I taught over the summer that met for 4 hours and 10 minutes, 4 days a week for, yeah, that was a good time. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go through here and total up these different accounts. Okay. Okay. So here, consulting services expense, 15,000, unearned revenue, 75, inventory is 20, prepaid consulting services is 35. For accounts payable, I had 32,000 in credits, 12,000 in debits, subtracting the smaller from the larger amount, I get 20,000. Here I've got 160 less 30, so I've got accounts receivable here of 130. For my dividends, I have 9. Rent expense, I have 3. Utilities expense, I have 2. Equipment, I have 50. And then loans receivable, I have 7. So what I'm going to do now is do my when it comes to labeling the trial balance, I really don't care. I know that sounds like kind of harsh, but I don't care. And the reason why is it is not an official financial statement. It's just a way we have of helping us go through and add up the various different accounts. That's why it's not worth very much. So here with my assets, I'm going to go ahead and start over here with my cash. So I've got cash here. My cash had a debit balance here of 244,000. My next asset account is going to be accounts receivable. That had a debit balance of 130,000. My next asset account is going to be prepaid consulting services expense. That had a debit balance of 35. Inventory, that had a balance debit of 20,000. Dividends, utilities, rent expense, utilities, those are not asset accounts. Equipment is an asset account over here of 50. Loans receivable, this has a debit balance of 7. Are there any questions on what I just went through and did? So I'm listing out all of my asset accounts. When I do my trial balance, I want to go assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenues, and expenses. So here for my liabilities, I have accounts payable. Stephanie, you got a question?
Yeah, so you listed the assets, but you didn't include the utilities expense. Like, why is that?
Okay, so utilities expense is not an asset. That is an expense. And so similar to what this is a great question. I'm glad you're asking it. Because similar to over here, right, what we did previously, I'm going to put my revenues and expenses at the bottom because those are the temporary accounts of what I used or what I earned during the period that are going to ultimately be closed out to retained earnings, right? So when I look here at the different types of accounts, consulting services expense, that's an expense. Rent expense is an expense. Utilities, and then basically utilities and rent expense. Prepaid consulting services, this could also be labeled as expense or not, but this is prepaid, so this is going to be an asset. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it's like basically a different category. So it has a
different category, correct. So we're not going to put it in here. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to mirror my balance sheet, which is the AELOE. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
So sure. And then I also had my other liability is I had unearned revenue of 75,000. And as I look through here, I don't have any other expense accounts or any other liabilities. So for my owner's equity, I had over here, I have common stock, and this is going to be 260,000. What I'm going to do too is I'm going to put here retained earnings, and this amount is going to be 0. And this is how this works for our initial questions, because this is the first year of our operations, right? We brand new, so I don't have any prior earnings that the company is retaining from prior times. So the next thing, which is also going to be a little bit different, is I'm also going to put here my dividends. I'm going to put this below retained earnings because I know that I'm going to have to close out dividends to retain earnings. Dividends is not revenue, and it is not an expense. Dividends are when we are giving back to our shareholders. So here I've got consulting services revenue for my revenues of $160,000. So for my expenses, I have several. So here I'm going to have consulting services expense, debit of 15,000. I'm also going to have here rent expense of 3,000. I'm going to have utilities expense of 2,000. So when I add up all of my debits and my credits in total, and this is the one where I pray that it balances. If it doesn't balance, by the way, if it doesn't balance, what should I do? Should I panic and redo everything I just did in the problem? What's my best course of action on an exam? What do you think? Any thoughts? What should I do if it doesn't balance? Hello? Anybody there?
Read the categories.
Well, I could read the categories, but I could also, what I would want to do too is just do a quick check. A is a debit, A is a credit, B is a debit, B is a credit. So if I've laid out my question well, I should be able to do it pretty quickly. But if I'm not balancing, I would just move on. I would just go to the next part of the question, because what I'm the king of is partial credit. So if you can't solve something, or if something, don't let it bog you down. Keep moving forward. It's really, really important to keep on doing your work. Okay. So once I've done this over here, I go over here to my next one. So I've prepared an unadjusted trial balance. So what do I want to do next?
Returned earnings.
So I'm going to prepare, actually, before I do retain earnings, I'm going to do an income statement. So over here, I'm going to do an income statement for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So I'm going to go here, IRI income statement for the year ended 12/31/20. How do I do a single step income statement? What am I showing? So what's my income statement? What am I showing on an income statement? Let's look at this over here. Let's go back to our T account. This bottom line here, assets equals my liabilities plus my owner's equity. What does this represent? AELOE. What is this right here? This is is this my balance sheet right here?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. And what is this right here? Revenues minus expenses. What's that?
Profit net.
My net income, right?
Net
So that's my income statement. Okay. So if I write this T account out, that's kind of giving me a guidepost in terms of how I need to go through and do these questions. So right over here, when I'm doing an income statement, Miyako, I'm realizing that everybody's a little bit tired right now. We're down to 7 people.
Okay.
So I'll kind of do most of the talking for the remainder of the time, unless you have questions.
Okay.
Okay, so over here, I've got consulting services revenue. And this amount here is going to be 160,000. So my total revenues are going to be 160. For my expenses, I'm going to have over here, I've got consulting services expense. I have my rent expense, my utilities expense, and those were my 3 expenses. So over here, I'm going to have 15 plus 3,000 plus 2,000. So my total expenses are going to be $20,000. Okay, so how much is my net income? It's going to be my revenues minus my expenses, or $140,000. Okay, so that's my net income. Okay, what's the next thing I'm going to prepare? I go down the list and I see right over here, I've got to do a statement of retained earnings for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So I'm going to have IRI statement of retained earnings for the year ended 12/31/20. So how do I want to start my statement of retained earnings? It's going to be my beginning retained earnings plus what? Well, Tchaikovsky, it's going to be plus my net income. Then it's going to be minus my dividends. It's going to give me my ending retained earnings. Okay, so my beginning retained earnings will be 0. My net income is what I computed up here, or this $140,000. And then over here, my dividends,
9,000.
$9,000. So my ending retained earnings are going to be $131,000. Okay. So can we keep going, or do you want to end this and finish it on another night? What would you like to do?
Going.
Keep going. Let's do it. Okay. I love it. Okay. So right over here, once we get down, once we've gone through and we've computed, once we have computed retained earnings, what we need to then go through and do is close out all of our temporary accounts, meaning any income, expense or revenue, expense or dividend account. Okay, so we're going to close these all out to retained earnings. And when we close these out over here to retained earnings, so this starts over here with a 0 balance. And so all I'm doing at this point is I'm calling forth, right? I'm calling forth over here. I had consulting services revenue of 160,000. I had consulting services expense of 15,000 debit. I had rent expense of a $3,000 debit. I had utilities expense of a $2,000 debit. And then I had over here my dividends, which were a $9,000 debit. Okay. So when I'm closing out these accounts, what is my goal here? What do I need to make sure that what am I trying to do when I'm closing out accounts? What do I want to make all these these temporary accounts here?
0.
What is their ending balance need to be?
0.
0, correct. So the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to basically go over here. So what do I need to do in order to make consulting services revenue? What do I need to do to make that account go to 0?
Debit.
Need a debit, okay? Okay. So sorry, I just like to do the my little coloring exercise. It's always fun. Okay, so I need a debit here to 160,000. So for every debit, I need a credit. What account do I credit?
Credit.
So if I'm debiting consulting services revenue to make it 0, what account do I credit?
Retained earnings.
What do I do? Well, Tchaikovsky, I'm going to credit retain earnings because that's what I do when every account I'm closing out. So, well, Miyoko, you sound very excited. Okay, consulting services expense. To make this account 0, I'm going to credit it for 15,000. For every credit, I need a debit, so I'm going to go ahead and debit retain earnings here for 15,000. Rent expense. To make this 0, I need a $3,000 credit, which means I'm going to be debiting retain earnings for this right here. Utilities expense, I need a $2,000 credit to make it 0, which means I'm going to be debiting retain earnings here. And then lastly, I'm going to be crediting dividends here to make this account 0, which means I'm going to be debiting retain earnings here for $9,000. So when I add up these accounts, I'm going to get $29,000 of debits, $160,000 of credits. What is my ending balance in retain earnings?
131.
It's going to be $131,000. And does that equal what I computed here?
Yes.
Yes. So I know I've done it correctly. My next step in this question is I'm going to be preparing a post-closing trial balance. So right over here, I'm going to prepare a post-closing trial balance. And what are the things that are changing when I'm doing a post-closing trial balance? What's changing?
Temporary.
All the temporary accounts I just zeroed out. So over here, most importantly, my cash, accounts receivable, prepaid consulting expenses, these accounts don't change. My liability accounts don't change. My common stock doesn't change. However, do I now have a new balance in retain earnings? And the answer is yes. In retain earnings, I have a credit of $131,000. And so then over here, my dividends went to what?
0.
0. My consulting services revenue, and then these various accounts are all 0. So my total debits equal my total credits. Even if they didn't equal, I would still keep moving on because these are just like worth a point each. They're not worth that much. The last part that we're going to go through and do is we're going to do a balance sheet. And when we do a balance sheet, we want to read the instructions because it's going to tell us right here what we need to do. And it tells us we need to do a balance sheet as of December 31st, 2020. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say IRI balance sheet as of 12/31/20. And if I've set up my trial balance like this, it's going to be relatively easy for me to do. Because if I've done it where I've got my assets, liabilities, and equity, I can essentially just go through here and copy these over. Obviously, it'd be a lot nicer if you had a Google sheet for your test or an Excel sheet, but unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. Okay, so my total expenses over here are going to be, sorry, this is my total assets, it's getting late. So total assets, it caught me. Okay, and this is going to be equal to my liabilities. So for my liabilities, I have accounts payable, then I have unearned revenue. So my total liabilities are going to be, and of course I just spelled that beautifully. Over here, my total liabilities, okay. So my total liabilities are 95, and then I'm gonna have owner's equity, which is going to be my common stock and then my retained earnings. So over here, I've got 260, and in here, I've got 131. So my total owner's equity is going to be 391,000. So my total liabilities plus owner's equity is going to be 95 plus 391, or 486,000. And so we are done. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yay, 2 hours of fun. Like, damn, that's great. It's exciting. So yeah, so there you go.
So is this the only video for the whole week, or we're gonna have another more videos coming up for this coming week?
So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have for your second exam. So let me just go to my YouTube channel. Actually, let me just go to this.
Would the problem we just went over be like the whole exam, or there's more than that one?
No, so this right here, the problem we just did is probably going to be around between 50 to 60% of your test.
Okay.
Right. So it's like, yeah, it's a pretty big chunk of your exam. And that's why, and the more important thing though is why you need to know how to go through and do this is because for your next exam, we're literally going to be you're going to have the same thing, which means that instead of this being worth like 40% doing the initial entries, it's going to be worth like maybe 5%. And then I'm going to tell you which entries require adjustments. And then that becomes a bigger part of it. So what I'm most fearful of are the students who are not practicing this question. Because look, my whole philosophy in terms of teaching accounting is pretty simple. I don't play hide the ball, but my exams are brutal. And if you haven't gone through and practiced repeatedly, and it seems like really easy, like when I'm saying, oh yeah, debit, credit, like, you know, there we go. But no, you're learning a skill and you have to be fast. If you're not quick, and that's why it's so important to time yourself on my exams, because if you don't have like that speed, it's going to be what I always call a bad day at the office, meaning that it's going to be a tough exam. And it's even more important that you learn this, because the worst email I have to send out is after the first exam, if someone bombs it, right? Because you can drop your lowest test, right?
Yeah.
And what happens, everybody says, oh, dude, you know what? I had a real rough night last night, and I haven't studied for 3 weeks. And yeah, I don't want to. Yeah. And then I'm going to write to that student and say, look, exam number 2 is coming up. And guess what? If you don't go back and relearn everything we just did, the whole thing that I'm going to be explaining to you coming up is going to be brutal. I mean, it's just there's like nowhere to go. So if I looked at, though, in terms of to answer your question as far as more, basically more things that we have to go through and do. So let me just take a look here for my video links. Okay, so we've done the overview. So I'll probably throw in a question that'll just have balance sheet questions only. Right, and I might do something where you have to create journal entries out of that. Also over here, like basic financial statement creation, we just went through and pretty much did all of these questions. The one other question I would recommend looking at is I added a video to this problem 2A. This is a question that I took from your book. I modified it with certain language. And then I did a video and did a walkthrough of the solution. So this is another question that you can actually go through and practice with.
Is that a video already uploaded on YouTube?
Oh yeah, this is already up on YouTube. So I literally made that one. That's another one that I did. As you can see, like spending a lot of time this weekend doing videos. So yeah, that was one I literally did. I think I may have made that video yesterday or on Friday.
Is it the adjusting journal entries one with the part one?
No. That one is not going to be for your second exam. I actually made that video. You mean, so do you subscribe to my channel?
Yeah.
Awesome. You know, you're going to get a lot of cool benefits and like other things. I'm totally kidding. But when it comes that question that I posted today is more of when you get to your next exam, that's really a review for my intermediate accounting. Because one of the things I do teach intermediate accounting here at IVC, and when I teach intermediate accounting, I get a problem sometimes because, believe it or not, I get students that don't know debits and credits. If you don't know debits and credits, is that a problem in accounting?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm getting students who took financial accounting someplace. They come to my classroom and they don't know debits and credits. And it's absolutely brutal. I don't know what to do. So it's one of those things where I would just tell you that the best thing to do is you would rather be over rather than being underprepared. So that's what I would kind of suggest to you. So yeah, I mean, if you can go through and if you can do this problem 2A, if you can do this IRI problem, you understand how to go through and record balance sheet transactions. If you know how to do journal entries, and then if you've been doing the questions I've been posting in the discussion groups, I will be grading those shortly, just because that can also be incorporated in part of the exam, and I may pull a very small percentage out of the book homework. But if you can go through and do these questions that we're going over, you're going to be in really good shape for the exam.
Would the book questions be in a similar format as the way you teach online?
Probably not. I would probably just look, and I have to go back and look to see what I assigned. But because it's the online class, so in my in-person class, it's all from lecture. If it's my online class, I'm still trying to figure out because the online class is a little slightly more reliant on the homework from McGraw-Hill. However, the main emphasis in the online class is going to be these questions here. Like the questions we just did and the balance sheet question, that's probably going to be close to 75, 80% to 90% of the exam. And so that's really what I'm most fearful of, is that like students are not, I have students who I have to email because they haven't gone through and responded to anything yet. So that's always a fun email to go through and write if they don't know how to register for Canvas yet, which is somewhat frightening because your exam is about 13 days away. And if you haven't practiced, it's going to be brutal.
I also have a quick question in
Sure.
regards to the access code. So I just recently bought the access code and registered to connect. And
Yeah.
it says that you have 720 days. 720 days to access or use the access code. Are we still able to use it for accounting 2B or 1B?
So here we go. So if you're going to take accounting 1B next semester, whether you take it with me in person, I don't teach it online. That's Professor Bradshaw. But if you take it with me, and by the way, if you're in my class and you want my 1B, either honors or in-person section, I try to give my former students priority over everybody else. So if you've taken me for 1A, I will try my best to get you into accounting 1B, in person or online. Actually, in person or in the honors or in the regular section. And so that code will last for accounting 1A and 1B.
Okay, so we'll still be able to access it even after.
And if even for some reason you weren't able to, like say that it's like, Bennett, I can't, something happened, I couldn't complete the course, I'm going to call the publisher and get you a free code. I mean, you should only be paying for it once. So if it ever comes up where, there's some issue or something like that, yeah, I mean, if you have 720 days, which is essentially 2 years, that's more than enough time. and this is not really necessarily a book that you're going to, the best accounting book that I've seen that you'd actually really go back through and reference is Kiesel and Weingart. And that's a book that's being used for like intermediate accounting. That's not used for this class. So the book that the accounting book that I hold in high regard is Kiesel and Weingart Intermediate Accounting. And part of the reason is if you look at, take a look here at this problem 22A, and are you on this page right now? Do you see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've had to go through and modify the question. And part of the reason why I've had to go through and modify it is because the way that they wrote it is not technically correct. So part of the challenge I have with your textbook, you know, it does an okay job in terms of saying things through. But on some of these questions here, like for example, when it says about the owner, it's basically this part down here. They showed that the owner gave cash and office equipment. When you're reading that as a first-time student, you could actually get confused, because if she's contributing the equipment, and even if it's being used for a month, you'd have to depreciate the equipment, which you don't really do until chapter 3. So the challenge I have with this book is that there's certain things, like I said, oh, they paid $3,000 cash for the premium of an 18-month insurance policy that will run between these two dates. And the thing is that if you say, oh, they paid $3,000 cash for the premium on a policy, if you don't specify that it's going to be used in the future, you're not going to know to debit prepaid insurance and a credit cash. And so this is really, and again, these are just really kind of technicalities that I have really a problem with the book. And they say, oh, well, you bought additional drafting equipment. You technically should be depreciating it. And then over here, if you have a long-term note payable, then you'd have to recognize some sort of interest expense. So the way that the book has written their questions are not necessarily, for an introductory accounting student, are necessarily the best. Because if I write a question and I write something that's vague or ambiguous, what can you do about it? You can come up to me and say, hey, Tchaikovsky, you're not going to tell me to shove it, but you're going to say, hey, dude, you messed up. And I'd say, oh, yeah, you're right. I need to throw out this part of the question, or I need to clarify it during the exam. So, and if I get a question that I write poorly, what I will do is I will go through and I will just get rid of it. I'll basically say I'm going to throw it out of the exam. And has that happened before? Sure. Do I make mistakes when I write tests? All the time. So I try to be, most of all, I have to be really, really fair. So that's a long-winded explanation, and I'm sure McGraw-Hill's not going to like me when I say these kinds of things. But, you know, honestly, their book, I met their author, John Wild, and I told him that when he was doing journal entries, they're not technically correct because they don't ask you to do a description. So there you go. That was probably a much longer answer to your question than you wanted. But I want you to understand though, like, look, I'm here to see you succeed, right? Mm-hmm. I want you to get an A in my class. I want you to get through this. I want to help you transfer to a 4-year school. And then I want to see you do awesome, right? Mm-hmm. That's what my goal is I want to see you do really, really well. The relationship lasts a lifetime. We're only here for 16 weeks together. Right. That's really what I'm trying to do, is get you prepared that when you transfer, you're successful. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of work. But honestly, if you can get through and do this class, it's like, what's awesome is I can recommend you for jobs making between 15 to 20 bucks an hour. Mm-hmm. So again, that's what I would just say. It's like, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're going through and looking at this. And is everybody here? Is everybody here in the online section?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I do have space because I had a person or two drop. Is anybody interested in doing the in-person class?
What time is the in-person?
10:30 to 12:45 Monday and Wednesday. If you're interested, and this is just for these people that are on this con for Zoom, if you are interested, just send me an email and then I can give you an APC code in like
So
the next 24 hours.
Did you say Wednesday? Did you say
It's
Wednesday?
Monday and Wednesday from 10:30 to 12:45.
Oh, okay.
You probably have something that's happening there. That's probably why you're taking it online right now anyways, but it's just, I want to put it out there for you. Okay, so is there anything else before we sign off and say goodnight?
For the online homework, I remember you slightly mentioned about it, but how does the grading work for that again?
So what's going to happen is that when I go over here to, let's take a look. So by the way, if you see your image, you know who this is right here?
No.
That's Pickle Rick from Rick and Morty. Do we know who this is right here?
No.
Ben Affleck from The Accountant. Do you know who this is right here?
You?
That's not me. I know, Miyoko, you're thinking that's me. This is Rick Singer, who did the whole college scandal. That's like a younger picture of him before he is now spending time in federal jail. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so going over here to your modules. And if I take a look at your online syllabus, okay, so right over here, see, okay, so you're gonna have 60 points in weekly discussion groups. I actually haven't graded those yet. And then the Connect homework that is being assigned to you, that's also gonna be 60 points. So for every exam, you have to go through and compute you have to complete that homework, or if I'm assigning you homework separately. So the Connect homework is worth something. And then also in terms of the weekly discussion groups, that also has value too. I was waiting on the weekly discussion groups. And as you can see right here, I've got a grade about 29 of these. So this is something I have to go through and do, as well as the extra credit in terms of the introduction. So I just haven't gone through and done that yet. So I am planning on doing that should be in the next couple days. As far as your answers I'm more interested in seeing how you try to tackle the question. If you just write something where you say like, I agree, I'll probably ask you to flesh it out further. That's really kind of the purpose of like the discussion group. So yeah, I mean, like my goal is to give you the full credit on the homework. And in fact, if you go over to the modules and you look over here, right, like right over here, you see this, solution manual for chapter 1 and chapter 2, then you can kind of go through and do that homework. And you should be able to get full credit.
Is that something we get like multiple attempts on without getting our?
I believe you do. If you don't, let me know, and I will go through it. I can change it. I think you get like up to 3 attempts, but you have the answers. Okay.
Yeah.
You have the solutions. Okay.
Okay.
So, and by the way, if the questions are different than my answers, you need to email and say, "Hey, Tchaikovsky, what's up? You've lied to us. You've deceived us once again. Your attorney side is coming out. As a lawyer, you're lying. Your lips are moving." Right? So that's what you need to do. Just tell me, like, look, and I'm here to be incredibly fair. Now, if you email me on September 6th, which is the day before your exam, and saying, "Hey, Tchaikovsky, your online thing isn't right," then I'm going to say, "Well, I'm sorry, but you're telling me like last minute and you really want me to make a change." Like, no way. That's different. So as long as you tell me in advance, we should be fine.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
I think just one more from me.
Sure.
So
And this is Tibi?
yeah.
Okay, sure.
So for the exam, like as you mentioned, since we're not like, I guess doing the exam through spreadsheet, it's more on paper.
Yep.
Would it like look exactly like the way you would input it, like on the spreadsheet? Because it's kind of like spread out everywhere.
It is spread out everywhere but you're going to get a booklet that's going to have about 18, and be like 9 pages or 10 pages double-sided. And so you're
Oh,
going to have,
okay.
it's going to be a stapled booklet. You're going to be able to unstaple it, and then you can write wherever you want to on it.
Oh, okay.
Hold on. Yeah. So that's pretty much what it is. So yeah. Yes, my family's at they got to go to Disneyland tonight, and I'm doing Disneyland right here online with my online honors class. So my online accounting 1A class. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, it's going to look pretty much the same. So and meaning that you're going to have like a listing of transactions, right? And then I'm going to give you blank sheets with various different T accounts on them. You're going to have a place which is already going to have a trial balance, and then you're going to have the basically the grid of the T accounts to close out to retain earnings, and then you're going to have a place to do a balance sheet. So all that will be provided to you. You're going to have to write in though the account names on the balance sheet, on the closing out to retain earnings, on the trial balance, etc. But the names of the accounts will be on the initial T accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So does that answer your question, Tibi?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, too, it's like, look, if you're seeing something on an exam for the first time or something that you didn't see, like on my lectures or something else like that, more than likely it also means that no one else in your class has seen it either. So what do you want to do in that? When you get to an exam, this is actually really important. The way you want to approach the exam is, do you want to start with the first question and work to the end? Or how do you want to take an exam? What's the best way to take it? How do you take an exam when you're taking it for any other subject?
Start from the top. When you get stuck, just move on.
Nope, not at all. That's not the right answer. You start with the part that is going to be easiest for you first. Why is that important to do? Why do you want to start with the part that's easiest for you first?
So you get everything done faster?
Well, because you're going to build, it's psychology. You're basically going through and you're giving yourself confidence. If the whole exam doesn't look familiar to you, it's going to be a tough day. But you want to start with the questions that are easiest for you first. Build your confidence. Get through those questions the quickest. And then if you see something later on, you'll get into good BS mode, which is actually, I shouldn't say BS, but it's like you'll get into good exploratory mode or good, what's a good word for it? I don't know. Good creative thought mode. But you want to go through and answer the questions that are easiest for you first, and then do the harder ones. That's how you want to go through and take an exam in any class. Sorry, Stephanie, did you have a question?
I was just gonna ask if how long is the exam? Is it 2 hours?
The exam is 20 hours long. We're not going to leave the room I'm just kidding. Now the exam is going to be an hour. I think it's going to be 2 hours long. I don't allow restroom breaks. So when you get in there, you can bring water, but I don't allow restroom breaks. I've had too many issues with that, and I'll make some more announcements as we get there. But if you take a look at my syllabus, I think I have my syllabus, when it comes to the description in terms of how my exams work, generally you're going to have like an hour and 50 minutes to do it, or maybe like 2 hours. I like to start my exams early. So if I want to start my exams on time, so I'll actually start passing out exams at least 5 minutes early, because by the time I get out all my exams, it's like, it just takes some time. I have a whole section right here in terms of exam procedures. And so this is really a good thing to go through and read. It's basically an hour and 50 minutes, which will pretty much be like 2 hours. And I'm very clear about when time's up or like other things like that. So yeah, that's what will happen when you come into the exam room.
Is there like a special room to take the exam?
No, we're just gonna be in BISTIC 103. So what I'll do is, if you have something through DSPS, they have to notify me that you're gonna be taking the class separately. But if you're a normal student, then, I mean, it's not necessarily a normal student, but if you're a student that doesn't have that exemption, you're gonna come to BISTIC 103, and I'll send out a map for that. But it's in the business sciences building in that outside room, and it's in a lecture room. You're going to be sitting like every other seat. And I have different versions of the exam. I have version A and version B. And it's just to really stop. I've had issues with exam improprieties previously in past semesters. So I'm pretty, when it comes to exam procedures, I can be a real jerk if you don't listen. But you're going to listen and it's going to be great. So just make sure you have a 4-function calculator, meaning it just adds, subtracts, multiplies, and divides. If you have a fancy scientific calculator, it's going to be a huge problem, because I'm not going to be, or like one that does equations, just because I can't let you use that type of calculator. So, but I'll make more announcements on that as we get there. But yeah, you'll sit in the room, I'll pass out the exams, I'll collect the exams, and then hopefully within about a week, you'll have your exam grades back. And then you'll have an opportunity to review those if you want to come to my office hours or the like. I try to get the first exams graded really quickly, because so much of the second exam is based on the first test. So if you really struggled on the first exam, I need to let you know as quickly as possible, mainly because if you're going to continue on with the class, you're going to have a lot of work to catch up on. Okay, anything else?
No.
My wife loves it when I'm mansplaining, which means I'm explaining beyond what the questions you're asking me.
It's helpful, so thank you.
Well, hey, I want to see you guys do. I want to see everybody in the class do great, and it's just one of those things. And I know I have known a lot of former students who took this class before online, and the horror stories that I heard was that they would come in, everything would be online except for the final exam. And what would happen would be, and does anybody here know somebody who's taken the class previously online? Okay. So they would take all the exams, they would generally be online, and then they would come and take the final exam, and their grades would go from like an A to like a C. And just because there was a final exam that was given that made absolutely no sense. And my goal is not to put you in that type of position. I would rather see you get the material, work on it throughout the semester, have something that's as close to the real experience. And this is just not a class that really should be, we're doing it online, but it's not necessarily really online. It's almost like hybrid, because you have those in-person exams, but there's no way I could give your exams online. It would just be impossible to do. And the schools that do it, like there's some other area community colleges that do not require in-person exams, and that's just a huge mistake. And I can tell you the reasons why it's not good to do. So I'm glad that you're here and you value your education. Okay, so Tibi and Miyoko, you guys have any other questions?
I am good.
Or Stephanie, do you have any other questions?
Oh, no, I'm okay. Thank you.
When will be the next conference room, I guess?
What I'm going to try to do is maybe do it on, I'm sorting my office hours right now. I'm thinking of doing it maybe on Wednesday. So with that, does Wednesday work for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe like Wednesday between like 4 to 5:30.
Can I do it at night?
Oh, I can't do at night.
Yeah, I see. This is the problem, is like everybody has like different schedules. So I think what I may end up doing is doing it sometime on Wednesday. But look, After I do a Zoom, I'm going to basically turn around and post it up. And if you want me to review questions or something that you can't make the Zoom, then just send me an email, and then I'll try to cover it in that particular Zoom.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you for participating. You will all be YouTube stars shortly. I'm gonna say good night. Or you'll be YouTube stars on an unlisted basis. So I'm gonna say good night and have a great one. And I will see you soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night. Take care.